But I think it's also worth pointing out that a lot of the old beliefs about the way the world was, or used to be, or has been in the past, are obviously getting something of a revision, something of a new coat of paint. Because if you're paying attention to what's happening, the places where you see the worst kind of trends playing out, the places where you see people suffering the worst kind of indignities. I had a friend, for example, who, heaven knows what he said online, but PayPal just decided they were taking $2,500 of his and no appeal. Thank you. And you hear about people being debanked, right? With no explanation given, just you get a letter from your bank and you're not allowed to bank there anymore. And that's that, right? And so where is that happening? Well, it's happening in the UK, happened with Nigel Farage. It's happening in the US, right? Joseph Mercola had to deal with that, if I'm saying his name correctly. And these people are being punished for their views. You don't hear about anybody being debanked in Mexico. You don't hear about people losing their freedom to move around or to keep their money or to use a payment platform or having their funds confiscated by somebody in Mexico. Is it happening? I guess it's possible. But my point here is you do feel a certain liberty when you go to Mexico, even though that's not normally what people associate with being in Mexico. And I think the reason for this is you're talking about a country where their basic trajectory right now is still up. What's up, everybody? Tay Nix here, back again with the Expat Files. I want to talk to you about a short trip I just made to one of my favorite places in the world. But this was unique. I'm talking about Mexico. And I spent a lot of time in Mexico. My son was born in Mexico. I have a real affinity to Mexico, not just because of its proximity to the part of the world where I live now. If you're in North America, Mexico has tremendous advantage in that it's so close, so easy to get to from our part of the world. And I'm talking to you in the Caribbean, so it's equally easy for me. But also because Mexico really throws a lot of different things into the mix, one of which is a really tremendous level of personal freedom. Now, you don't think of Mexico as being the bastion of personal freedom, but I think it's also worth pointing out that a lot of the old beliefs about the way the world was, or used to be, or has been in the past, are obviously getting something of a revision, something of a new coat of paint. Because if you're paying attention to what's happening, the places where you see the worst kind of trends playing out, the places where you see people suffering the worst kind of indignities. I had a friend, for example, who, heaven knows what he said online, but PayPal just decided they were taking $2,500 of his and no appeal. Thank you. And you hear about people being debanked, right? With no explanation given, just you get a letter from your bank and you're not allowed to bank there anymore. And that's that, right? And so where is that happening? Well, it's happening in the UK, happened with Nigel Farage. It's happening in the US, right? Joseph Mercola had to deal with that, if I'm saying his name correctly. And these people are being punished for their views. You don't hear about anybody being debanked in Mexico. You don't hear about people losing their freedom to move around or to keep their money or to use a payment platform or having their funds confiscated by somebody in Mexico. Is it happening? I guess it's possible. But my point here is you do feel a certain liberty when you go to Mexico, even though that's not normally what people associate with being in Mexico. And I think the reason for this is you're talking about a country where their basic trajectory right now is still up. It's improving, and they like their prosperity very, very much. In this case, the past week I spent in the south of Mexico in the state of Chiapas. Now, this is a really, really unique part. Most people think of Mexico, they think of Cabo, they think of Mexico City, maybe Querétaro or San Miguel, somewhere in the center, or of course the Riviera Maya, Playa del Carmen, Cancun, and now the very fast-growing and very trendy Tulum. I went to Chiapas. I passed through Chiapas in 1999 on my way south to what would be a very fateful rendezvous with my own destiny, where I bought property in Central America and built a house and lived on and off for a number of years. And just had an extraordinary experience in the forests and mountains, the high plateau of Guatemala, learning medicine and having all kinds of various interesting experiences that really, really taught me how to go global, taught me how to live internationally, at a level and to a degree that your casual traveler or your casual, hey, let's book a trip to Club Med this year kind of tourist just doesn't know and doesn't understand, doesn't know even exists. And so I passed through Chiapas and San Cristobal de las Casas, one of the major cities in Chiapas. The other one is Tuxtla Gutierrez, where you fly in, where the main airport, that's the capital of Chiapas. And just had an eye-opening experience. Now, I know Mexico pretty well. In 1999, when I passed through, it was nothing special. It was very pleasant. One of the things that you notice in Chiapas is the altitude. You're very, very high up, so it's cool, which is nice because in most of Latin America, certainly where most people spend most of their time, if you end up in Mexico, you're sweating your clothing absolutely every single day. In a place like the Riviera Maya, I mean, the heat is so disgusting, it's nauseating, right? But at that altitude, it's very, very pleasant. Even during the day, it gets warm, but it's nice and cool at night. So right away, there's a whole different feel to the place. But there was something else, and I'm going to tell you about it here at the end. I just want to talk about the community and what is happening in these parts of these little enclaves in various portions of Mexico. I discovered a real serious, very committed expat community. These are people who are bringing resources and knowledge and help and a sort of communal vibe to, hey, we're here also, let's make the most of it. I have skills. What are your skills? Let's see if we can build something together. A good friend of mine is a key player, I would say, in all of this. He and his wife are putting together just fantastic events to allow people to really come together and get to know one another. And also because there is this shared purpose or this shared goal of trying to find a place outside the obvious control of your home government. If you're coming from the US or Canada, and you want to find a place like that, they do exist. They're out there and they're not that hard to find. What I've done with Expat Files is to try to show you all the different communities. A file is a group of people working together and living together based on shared values. What a concept, right? That used to be the norm in most of North America, at least for a portion of my life. But it's not really that way anymore. And the kind of friction that you see, the kind of problems that you see, you can sidestep a lot of that by just going to a community where people are intentionally trying to find ways to leverage their skills and to make a good life outside of the hassles and all of the pain in the neck kind of regulations that you get back home in North America. And so these things are happening. This is taking place. Now, my adventure was this past week. I went and met with some people, had a chance to meet. We shared a meal or two. It was Thanksgiving. So hung out together up in San Cristobal and then took a trip to the coast. Now, the growth happening in Mexico, again, my point to you is, for whatever headaches you would find in a place like Mexico, the place is still on the way up. And the feeling there is that the people are very, very happy and very proud of their new prosperity. And they do have a lot of prosperity in Mexico. We went to the coast and there's a deep water port. It's not actually a deep water port that's being built. It's a port that's being actually rigged the way they do it on the Pacific coast, because there's not a lot of harborage. There's not a lot of obvious bays where you could necessarily create a port, but they'll just build a large seed ball. Now, this takes big machinery and a lot of resources because you're dropping huge rocks into deeper and deeper water to build a huge barrier against the sea so that large ships can come in. And so this is happening in a very specific location on the Pacific coast. The port has never been that extensive. But you can see what's about to happen is once you have a port where that much commerce is going to be coming in from all over the world and then trucked around Mexico and right goods distributed and all the rest, you have a real fountain of prosperity. And so that's happening on the Pacific coast. We drove about 5 hours to get there. We passed through the most unbelievable wind farm where there's probably, I don't know, there might have been as many as 1,000 of these enormous wind turbine windmills that you see that are so often broken and they cost so much money and are quite frankly so inefficient. But this little corridor we had to drive through on the way to the Pacific coast was just chock-a-block, and hundreds of these things, and they're enormous, obviously. So that represents a very large investment by the Mexican government to try to generate electricity by all the wind that comes through that little corridor. So the other thing that we saw that I thought was worth mentioning, I'll try to stick some B-roll footage in here for you, is the immigrants, the immigration of people actually trekking and walking all the way from the south, where they must have crossed the Mexican border, either with Guatemala, I suppose, and then obviously with the goal of crossing the border to get into the United States in the north. So people walking on foot all day, every day, sleeping in the bushes. These people are very well funded. They all have new clothing, new backpacks. They do not look like they are hungry and headed north. They're not down and out. Africans, looks like Haitians, like people from the Caribbean, people from all over the world. I saw some Asians, Chinese looking people on foot walking through Mexico to get to the US border, hoping to enter. Very interesting. And so, and again, right, who's sponsoring all these people? I mean, we can hear the rumors, but when you see it, when you see caravans of people who wake up in the morning and walk all day, there's food set out for them. There's even like taxis and motorcycles that will ferry them a certain distance to help get them further north. The police obviously don't do anything to hinder or hassle these people. They just want them to keep moving. And so that's all very, very interesting. It's a very interesting comment to see that happening and to know what's behind that, and sort of to know that that's what's headed toward the US day after day after day. These people are headed north and crossing into the US to see whatever kind of life they can get, and probably eventually going to cause real problems and real friction, that all of that is happening and that nobody's putting a stop to it. So that's what's happening in North America. And yet in Mexico, you see people with their tremendous pride in their prosperity. We had dinner at a couple of very nice places in San Cristobal, really high-end restaurants. Mexico is not a place where you find tons and tons of luxury everywhere you look. A lot of Mexico, there's construction materials and like a pile of sand over here because they're mixing cement to build the next wall or to pave this street. So Mexico looks like, very much wherever you go, a work in progress. I mean, it's like this in Tulum. There's construction in Cabo. There's all kinds of stuff that's still going on where Mexico looks like it's half done. But bit by bit, you do see the tremendous luxury level accommodations, restaurants, the various nice places that people expect can be found. You can find this stuff in Mexico. So if you think that your lifestyle is going to take a big hit by heading south or by heading to some portion of Latin America, well, that might be true to a degree, but it's not as true as people want to make it out to be. We actually went to there's a whole emporium of all various restaurants and different eateries inside this one central location in the main city in San Cristobal, and we had some absolutely excellent, wonderful beef at a Argentine restaurant that was part of that. Really top quality stuff. And again, the thing about Mexico that's so shocking, it's roughly 2/3 to 3/4 off. It's like a 75% discount everywhere you go. Maybe not 75%, but damn close. Like somewhere between 50 and maybe 66% off every time you go out. And that's shopping, that's food, that's almost anything you do. I stayed in a really nice Hilton for about $60 the night before I flew out. It would easily be over $200 in any place, like, I don't know, Fort Lauderdale, for example. Same quality, but right, again, about a quarter of the price. And so the main thing that I noticed that was really shocking, and I've been all over Mexico from one end to the other. I've worked on the Pacific coast. I used to go to the border and make border runs, Tapachula, and crossing over from various portions. I've been through. There's no region of Mexico. I drove down Veracruz on the Gulf Coast. My son was born in the Yucatan. I spent time also in the Riviera Maya. I've been to Cabo. I used to sail in and out of Cabo when I was on ships. And so the one thing that I did not expect. And obviously, the last time I was in San Cristobal was over almost 24 years ago. And so I did not expect to see this. But in San Cristobal, and this is really remarkable, if you've been to any part of Latin America, one of the main features that you see visually, that's in your visual awareness and that you're aware of all the time that you're there, is the tremendous apathy that leads to, and also just no solutions, right, for all the garbage. You see plastic bottles, you see foil wrappers and chip bags, and like every imaginable piece of garbage flying around everywhere because nobody really bothers to put it in its proper place. And also the municipality doesn't necessarily make the necessary facilities for disposing of garbage, right? For handling and just managing the trash in a way that we're obviously used to in the US or Canada. Although if you go through certain parts of the US and Canada now, I mean, it's even when I was in Vancouver, right, a couple of years ago, it's also started to become very nasty. Like nobody cares anymore. People just throw stuff everywhere. A lot of cities, like you go through LA or my God, San Francisco, right? It's like dead bodies lying around and all kinds of human waste and like really disgusting stuff. This is my point. In San Cristobal, for the first time ever that I'm aware of, that I've ever been, in all the years that I've spent in Latin America, you can't find one piece of garbage anywhere. It's not in the roads, it's not on the street, it's not on the sidewalk, it's not in the median. In like poor places like Guatemala, they dump their garbage right in the river. In Mexico, nothing. San Cristobal had nothing. There was no garbage anywhere. Maybe somewhere somebody like accidentally like dropped a gum wrapper right out their car window or something. But I'm telling you, you've never seen a place in Latin America this clean. And the reason I bring that up is, again, this pride that these people are experiencing because of their prosperity is really something to behold. That's not the dedication of a bunch of people being paid to pick up trash. That's not why San Cristobal looks so good. There's not a lot of people picking up trash because there's no trash to pick up. It's a pride in where these people are from and how they feel about their hometown, how they feel about where they come from, how they feel about where they live. It's society-wide and it's unique to Chiapas. If you don't know the history of Chiapas, the Mexican government went toe-to-toe with them about something. I forget what the hubbub was about. It was around 1994, so not long before I actually passed through there, and it was still very tense. Like you were aware, if you were passing through Chiapas, the so-called Zapatista rebels, right, as the government labeled them, which were, of course, just regular people who wanted to be left alone, right, stood up to the government and told them, like, look, we don't want anything from you, but we're not taking any shit from you either. Please get out, right? And they fought, and a lot of people were killed, and there was actual danger and violence for a number of years. And so I actually have a friend who purchased a piece of property and he's living up in the Zapatista community. It's very, very well ordered, very well run. Not sure it's for me, probably not for you either. A lot of rules to being part of that kind of community, and it's very communal, as in communist kind of dynamic, but they're lovely people. And my friends, especially, I mean, they're raising a family up there and building a place. So good luck to them. But my point here is there are parts of the world where, number one, things are still on the way up. Number two, the pride of the people, the same kind of pride that we used to see, right, in small towns in the US and all the rest before, right? We had to go through decades and decades where the government's lying about this and the government's screwing you about that. And then we're going to go have a war that nobody really wants. And you have to pay for it. And your son comes home with his legs blown off. And like all of the unbelievable bullshit that people have been served in the US in particular, but also now Canada has obviously taken a turn for the worse with this clown who's in charge right now, that you're seeing that the trend is clearly negative. And there's no leadership. There's anywhere who's suggesting how we're going to put a stop to that. Other countries like Mexico, in this case, are actually decidedly on the way up. And as they get more prosperity, they feel like having more of that. They feel like working harder and doing a good job. Mexicans are incredibly hardworking people. And so it's not a mystery where their prosperity didn't come from a central bank printing money and from Wall Street, essentially like robbing the middle class. That's not where their money has come from. It's come from getting up and getting to work on real things, building stuff, right? Lots of factories and all the rest. So there's a baseline of prosperity in Mexico that, if you're interested in living a global lifestyle, it's worth checking out. I did another video not long ago on the likelihood that if you're headed out of North America to create a global lifestyle, you're going to go through Mexico. It's almost guaranteed. Most people do. Most people if you're going to dip your toe into the whole international lifestyle thing, you're going to take a trip to Mexico to check it out. So put Chiapas on the list. It's really worth seeing. You would fly into, as I said, Tuxtla Gutierrez, Everything's new, everything's well kept. It's easy to get around the big highways in the cities, and all the way up to San Cristobal, which is about an hour away from the capital, is a big wide highway with good guardrails, and it's absolutely stunning. It's some of the prettiest mountain territory you've ever seen, minus all the garbage that you would normally see in that part of Latin America. So that's my report on. I'll have more to say about it. I'll probably write several posts about it. If you haven't signed up or subscribed to the channel and you like these videos and you like to hear about my travels and you want to know more about how to go global and how to figure out your way into the world of living internationally, there's really never been a better time, because obviously whatever's coming for especially the formerly free Western countries of the world is coming soon. There's a big reckoning on the horizon, and the idea that you could ride some portion of that out physically somewhere else, but also, right, to set your finances up in such a way that you're not beholden to one government. You don't have all your eggs in one political basket. The biggest danger you face right now is your home government. If you understand that and you take a few sensible steps that I can help you with, steps that you can take and be done with in less than 30 days in most cases for most people, and really sleep well at night knowing that whatever's coming is going to have a minimal impact on you and your family and your legacy. You'll be able to continue to live a reasonable lifestyle, untroubled by whatever is going on in your home country, if you're clever about this, if you act quickly. So let me know about that. If you're interested in talking to me, you can click the link below this video and get a free 15-minute strategy call. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you're up against. Ask me your questions, get your thoughts together, and let's talk. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and tell me what you want me to talk about next. If you have a special place on your mind, Argentina, Costa Rica, right? Any place at all, Panama, right? What do you want to know about? My specialty really is Latin America, because I think that's where most North Americans are going to probably look to, and already are looking to ride out tough times in the years ahead. That's enough out of me. Thanks very much. I'll be back with more great stuff.